from the Tra-La Radio Network, live on tape from the beautiful ACI Blanket Fort in scenic Bellevue, Washington. Better than the science fair, it's Science Great!
Science Great! Ryder!
Woo.
Tanner!
Let's talk about that.
Devin!
Wow, that's a winner.
Jake!
It's alive, it's alive.
Ben!
L'chaim.
Musical guest, Bronte loves Kafka! This week's theme, Halloween! Boo-ha-ha! It's Science Great Podcast with the special Halloween Spectacular! Spooktacular!
Spectre-acular. Spectre Dracula.
And more!
Wait, we got Dracula? Nobody told me Dracula was coming here.
We got a Dracula sound-alike.
A bite-alike. Just a guy who likes biting people.
No, don't worry, Dracula sent me.
I was thinking about something recently. I watched a vampire movie or something. I don't know why I was thinking about this, but for a very, very long time, until I was probably in my teens, I thought that the way that vampires worked was they had, like, holes going through their fangs, like straws, and I thought they just sucked the blood through.
Like a reverse.
Why did we think that?
Like a reverse
Where'd we get
snake.
that?
I totally.
Like a yeah.
I like that way better, but I watched. Oh, it was Vampire in Brooklyn with Eddie Murphy that I watched. Which
It never
was a
even
bad
occurred
movie.
to me that they were just drinking after they ripped a hole in their.
Yeah, they bite and then they drink. That's I think what we're supposed to believe about vampires.
Well, they leave such perfect holes, right?
yeah, so I was
It's
just like,
so clean afterwards too.
and then-
so it was just-
The problem I have with that is that they're biting the jugular, and then when they bite, there's just two little red dots and a little stream of blood. You're
it
gonna,
depends on what vampire.
all
movie
it's
you're
left,
watching.
Tanner.
in the real world, the jugular pumps a lot of blood. You would bleed out immediately afterwards.
Vampire bats have clotting stuff.
Do they
in their,
clot?
in their
Oh well, I
saliva.
guess so. If the
I thought it
vampires,
was anti-clotting stuff, so that it doesn't.
But when they
it's like a leech.
That's
get
leeches.
away, they might. I don't know anything.
why aren't there any
It's a science
mythical
show.
creatures based around leeches? That's what I want.
Because leeches are already
Leeches are already
horrific.
mythical
It's a
creatures.
little like black skinny worm you don't see that latches onto your leg or something, and then like
If you're
makes
lucky.
you.
Yeah, and there's a man standing outside in the rain, and he just like sings, and that's what makes them all go on the train, and they fight Billy and Claire.
You have different leeches than we have.
No, I'm pretty sure those are. I think so. You shoot them with your pistol. Use the zapping system to swap between the two.
Yeah, ours are just little black worms in the water sometimes. I'm never moving to Texas. They've got man worms that you have to shoot and put children on trains.
You have to shoot and put children on trains.
They're not children. Billy was an ex-con, and Claire is
I thought you said Billy and Crystal, and I was really just hoping you meant Billy Crystal.
I like the
He's
lore.
one man, Jake. He can't be in everything.
I like the lore that Billy Crystal started as two separate children.
Fusion! Ha! They just went in for a really quick hug.
It was just that our powers combined gone wrong that they haven't been able to undo yet.
He's the Captain Planet of the comedy world.
Billy, da-na, Crystal, da-na. Okay, that's it.
Our powers combined. Hi, everybody.
I'm kind of racist.
It's like Captain Planet.
Is Billy Crystal Captain Planet?
I thought that was Ted Turner.
Is Ted Turner Captain Planet?
Oh, I was thinking Ike
Turner.
Turner. Different Turner.
Basically, Captain Planet.
Is Tina Turner Billy Crystal?
And also,
All this and more on Science. Great.
Captain Planet, we don't need another hero.
Is Tina Fey Dark Crystal?
And now for my favorite segment, corrections.
Tina Fey is in fact
Perfect.
Corrections!
Hey there, sexy ducklings. So, last week, as you remember, our theme was gravity. As always, you guys are very kind to write into us and let us know everything we got wrong. So we're going to go ahead and clear up those incorrect things. First of all, we mentioned in passing that Weird Al's song Pancreas references the universal law of gravitation. The lyrics are, my pancreas attracts every other pancreas in the universe with a force proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the distance between them. Did you guys catch the error there?
Golly gee, I did.
Inversely proportional to the square of their masses. Weird Al, come on, man. Get it together. Second, in our section on Yo Mama jokes, Carol Yeager was the most massive woman ever. At the time of her death, she was 1,200 pounds. That was the statistic we cited, but apparently she weighed more before that. Some people estimate she weighed as much as 1,600 pounds. And our final correction, despite being named People Magazine's most beautiful woman for this year, Sandra Bullock is actually not the hottest fictional astronaut. That title belongs to Johnny Storm, a.k.a. the Human Torch.
fact.
Thank you for writing in and steering us straight.
Which brings us to our very Halloween episode. Those were words?
Yeah, that was good.
Those are perfectly fine words.
This week we're going to be going over everything Halloween, all kinds of spooky science. First up we got By the Numbers.
By the numbers!
As always, anyone have any numbers to share with us this week?
I, in fact, have some big old numbers for you. In 2014, there was a projected $7.4 billion spent over the entire holiday in the United States. Kind of a breakdown for that was 38% was spent on costumes, 30% on candy, 27% on decorations, and 5% on Halloween cards, which becomes a surprise. I guess it's a big business.
My mom sends me a Halloween card each year.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a lot of millions of dollars for cards, I think.
How much does a card cost? Like $1 to $5?
Yeah.
How much could one card cost? $10?
Yeah, some of them do.
Possibly $20.
It's actually just $5 million cards that get sent every year between the same 5 people.
The trouble with Halloween cards is you have to buy a deck of 52 of them. So 1 to 5 times 52.
Well, isn't it more than that? It's like 10 per suit, plus then you have all of like Death and the Tower and...
That's true. The Fool, the Sun, the Hierophant.
Spades.
Yeah, I forget how many cards there are.
High Priestess.
Right, the Ace of Spades. You got Lemmy Kilmeister.
Squirtle.
Meatloaf.
That one in there as well.
Foil Charizard.
Oh, the cherry flavor.
Blue Ice White's Dragon.
So far off topic. I got a foil Charizard the other day.
What?
I know. Some girl brought in a
First edition?
shoebox of, no, but she brought in a shoebox of Pokemon cards. She was like, I don't want these anymore. Take them. And so everybody kind of grabbed, and I grabbed a handful, and there was a foil Charizard and Blastoise in my handful. And I just very silently put it in my pocket and went back to my desk and told no one because I didn't want to fight Pokemon people over a little card that I've been trying to get since I was 12.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So original,
Like, I didn't
like-
even care what happened the rest of that day.
Oh, one other tiny number I forgot to put in. 350 million of those dollars were pet costumes.
Adorable.
Who's put a pet in a costume? A real pet, not a virtual pet. I see
Everyone
no
raised
hands.
their hands.
I see no hands because my eyes are closed. Now I'm opening my eyes and... Okay, yeah, 5 hands.
5 hands.
I had a bomber jacket for my dog, but it was because it was cold outside and it needed a little jacket.
I would have put my bomber jacket. He would have had to wear it in the summer. That's awesome.
It had a little fluff on it and stuff. It wasn't my idea, but I put it on my dog.
It just appeared one day, and you're like, yeah, I might as well.
My dog was always very adverse to anything being put on him, so we tried to put like a scarf on him, and he ripped it and then tore it to pieces.
I have some numbers on the energy inside of candy. So we know candy is pretty high in calories, obviously, pretty well known. The average trick-or-treater brings in about 4,800 kilocalories, or what we would commonly refer to as calories with a capital C, which is roughly equivalent to 20 megajoules. And in TNT terms, anyone want to guess how many kilograms of TNT that is?
3 sticks.
I don't know how much a stick of TNT is, but it's 5 kilograms of TNT, which are 11 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
That's 5 sticks.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised at the TNT to calorie conversion there.
I'm surprised it was so easy for you to find that conversion.
I didn't know kids with bags full of candy could convert that into TNT.
Kids are very resourceful today. You give a kid an iPhone.
Pop Rocks? That's messing around.
No, sir.
Yeah, if you keep Pop Rocks in the same bag as candy corn, there's like a 50-50 chance that it'll just go off.
Well, they hate each other. That's just...
Yeah, it's just a very stern argument between your candy going on in your bag.
No, I did not use the charge card this month.
So for all the candy in the country, that's 600 million tons of candy that is purchased. That's roughly 2,000 calories per pound of candy, which means that there are about 4 million calories in a ton of candy. So total, that's 2.4 billion calories consumed every year at Halloween, which is 10 trillion joules, which is 2.5 kilotons of TNT, which is 1/8 of a Fat Man, the nuclear bomb.
Wow.
Ben, I think you've just solved the energy crisis.
I think I did. Now, brings up an excellent point here. If you take that 2.4 billion calories, or 10 trillion joules, and you distribute that evenly over the entire United States, you end up with 1 kilogram per second squared. And you're asking me, okay, that's sort of an abstract unit. What does that mean, 1 kilogram per second squared? I have no idea.
So it's all the candy is moving at
1 kilogram
per second.
There's like a Snickers instantiating itself and like dissolving into the universe at every...
Yeah, I don't know. I just did some division and I was like, that's a number. It divides out to 1. It's like acceleration for mass, I guess.
But it's
Oh, it's how fast America's gaining weight per meter.
kilogram per second squared.
Like there's just a field out in Nebraska that just weight is just happening on like the corn and like the
Don't
grass.
go near that corn.
It's a town that's all bent in half. The more candy we make, the heavier they get.
All right, so we've gone by the numbers, but I have questions about actual application of this, because I think that you do have to get into... Anecdote is not going to give you the answer, but it's going to get you asking the right questions to find out how this data actually applies. So I go out trick-or-treating when I am younger than I am now. I'm using the present tense, which is inappropriate because this is happening in the past. When I went out trick-or-treating, I bring home that pillowcase. You have to assume that some's going to the parent tax. And some percentage, probably 60 to 70%, is going to the parent tax before it's been distributed to kids in the first place. Like, you buy that bag of candy, it's not making it to trick-or-treaters.
You got a pretty good rate, though. 60%'s not bad.
Yeah. So I bring home the pillowcase, I dump it all out, I make graphs out of my candy, I organize oh man, look at all these Tootsie Rolls and Dum-Dums. Stick it all back in the bag, eat as much as I'm allowed to eat before going to bed for the night, which is a piece or two. It's Halloween. Get to go crazy, maybe get 3. And then it's like another piece a day, and then sometime around January, my mom makes me throw away the rest. Is this an unusual experience? How much of your candy did you actually get to finish?
I was given unlimited access to my candy.
Yeah. Mine stayed in the freezer and was like the source of family sugar for
They put it
the
in
coming
the
months.
freezer?
Yeah. I don't know.
That just sounds like you to get home from trick-or-treating. Your parents snatch the bag and just throw it in the freezer. You can have this at Christmas.
Once all the Snickers and Reese's are gone, you can fight over the...
The Smarties.
Your parents take all the chocolate, just leave you just like pencils and the breath mints.
I actually had an aunt who, at some age, I was like, I'm too old to go out trick-or-treating. And I stayed home and I was like, I don't need this. And I could have gone out for a couple more years. But she was over and she's like, you may think you're too old to go trick-or-treating, but I really want free candy. We're going. And so she kind of took me out house to house. Was like, go get more candy.
I never was like, oh, I'm too old, I don't want to do this. It was, oh, I'm not allowed to do this anymore.
I trick-or-treated until I was a freshman in high school, and I had a homemade, home-stitched costume, beautiful costume, lovely costume, until one year I got really, really sick on Halloween, and I never trick-or-treated again. My sophomore year, I was just vomiting, and yeah, that's when I stopped trick-or-treating. And then I went with my little baby cousins, and I was the grown-up, and I was like, times have changed, Mr. Tanner, yes, quite.
Everybody in my town liked to do that thing where you dress up as a scarecrow and sit and wait for the kids to come up and scare
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Then the other people in our half of town really like to put scarecrows on their porch. So there was always a scarecrow, and you just had to really be on your toes, because it might be a 40-year-old man, or it might just be a scarecrow. And so you see this line of kids all just kind of like eyeballing it, and then one gets brave and runs up and grabs the candy, and they either get shoved by a grown-up to scare them, or there's nobody there, and then the house is just like rushed, and they're desperate. It's like, quick, before a monster shows up, because people are mean here.
We would always, or at least my mom, she would go and she would get full-size candy bars, like the king size. But she wouldn't give it to the kids who were trick-or-treating. She would only give them for like the teenagers that came in costume. If they didn't come in costume, they didn't get anything. Even the little kids, she was hesitant to give them any candy. She's like, this is part of this. You're just wearing a mask. You're boring.
Come to my house. I give generously.
Yeah,
We try and get full-size Snickers. We get like 6 kids, or 6 groups.
Well, where we used to live, it was like a kid central. We were just sprinting down the stairs, throwing candy at kids, sprinting back up, sprinting back down. Oh,
This was
great.
in November. Like, imagine what it was like on Halloween.
I know.
Actually, you know what? I use Halloween as a time to really judge the children in my neighborhood. It's like, oh, I dressed up as the soccer player wearing my soccer uniform that I have to wear every weekend. Oh, great.
You
Here,
had a game today, didn't you?
you get one piece of candy to share with your brother, because I'm not...
Share with your brother.
You, the princess, you can have a handful. That's great. That's a costume.
It's a costume.
It's a lame costume, but at least it's a costume.
I can tell that your marriage has already been arranged.
I'm going to marry a 6-year-old in a princess costume?
Oh, no.
Man, that's,
She's just really authentic.
say what you want now, because this is not making it in.
I wasn't doing anything weird.
Arranged marriages to 6-year-olds? Sure. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. That's a great time to arrange them. I mean, you don't get married when they're 6.
Oh.
Yeah, haven't you guys played CK2?
No.
Oh my goodness.
There was
I keep telling you no.
I keep on asking.
I often
Don't
play
play it.
letters and numbers put together.
There was a friend of mine that told me a story. Him and his friend set up with a paintball gun, and they left a sign in the yard. Teenagers will not be given candy. Don't step onto the yard, or there will be punishments, or something along those lines. It was a general warning of, like, if you're a teenager and you're trick-or-treating, don't cross this sign. And anybody who crossed it got shot with a paintball gun. And their parents didn't know this was happening, because generally they got hit with a paintball gun and then left. But there was this one kid who stepped over and he got hit, and they just saw him kind of take a deep breath and then ready himself, and he just charged for the door. And so him and his friend come out of the bushes, and they're just blasting him with the paintball gun. And he rings the doorbell, and he's sitting there getting his hit, and his mom opens, and there's just this kid getting peppered with paintball guns. Trick or treat! And they got in trouble.
All right. That brings us to our next segment. What's up, Doc?
What's up, Doc?
Looked in a little bit to decomposition of bodies, and it's kind of interesting that when it starts off, there's sort of a mode switch into something called autolysis or autolysis, whatever you want to call it, which is basically self-digestion. Because, our whole body's full of all these microbes and weird little things that are also living with us, kind of like roommates or something. And then once our immune system clocks off and stops, those start spreading outwards and go unchecked, particularly in our stomach, our intestines and stuff, because that's where a lot of that stuff is and needs a lot.
You are what you eat.
Yeah. And then what you are eats you. There's some researchers who have nicknamed it, because your stomach is like a microbiome. They nicknamed it Thanatomicrobiome, which is like Thanatos, the god of death, and his own little microbiome thing.
With Pauly Shore.
Yeah. So it sort of starts breaking down. The first to go are the spleen, the intestine, and the stomach. And
The pancreas, too. That's just full of bacteria.
oh, yeah.
Golly gee.
I love my pancreas.
It does some good
Buddy.
stuff for us.
Last to go is the kidney, the heart, and the bones. I would assume that the bones are the last to go. I don't usually see like a boneless animal or something, but they decided to put that in there anyways, I guess.
I think if you did see a boneless animal, like a decomposed boneless animal, I don't know if I would know, because that's all covered up, and I'm not like poking and prodding at the body. Hey, something doesn't feel right here.
Yeah. Like, this deer carcass is a little squishy for my tastes.
But I've seen enough movies that I know that when you open up a coffin, it's just bones.
That's what they tell us, right? And then there's some stuff after that. The process goes from needing oxygen to not needing oxygen, which is aerobic to anaerobic. Things start turning into gases and liquids and salts, which I also found interesting. I mean, not obviously traditional salt, but compounds that include that. And then another thing I found interesting is that the fly maggots have this weird dance they have to do where because they're all like eating and doing stuff, it makes it super hot. So you know like how penguins huddle in like the Arctic? Maggots have to do like the opposite. They want to be on the outside to cool off, but then birds eat them. So then they want to go back in the middle so they don't get eaten, but then they might get cooked alive in there. So they have to come out. So they say it's like a roiling thing where they're just kind of running in circles trying to get cool and not.
So it just looks extra creepy.
Yeah,
It's just like as much movement and
yeah.
gross.
Out of all the things, maggots are just gross and whatever. But I found that pretty cool.
That just makes the birds extra gross. Like, that's their existence, is get the maggots that would otherwise get cooked alive, who are on the outside of the wound or gaping flesh. That's disgusting. Science is disgusting.
Gross things are gross.
Science is beautiful.
Grossology.
I feel like this is a pretty good segue into our next segment. Science fiction! Science fiction!
This is dated 2014. I don't know if that is exactly when all of this research started or when the news started coming out, but there has allegedly been some proof that teleportation is real. And the headline here is "Teleportation is real, and here's why it matters." It goes to what Dutch physicists call quantum entanglement, which Einstein described as, quote, spooky action at a distance. They got a particle in one crystal to move in the same way as a particle in another crystal 30 meters away or something like that. They're saying that this is proof that they are able to replicate one thing in a different place with nothing connecting them, which sounds to me like Wi-Fi. But the reason I want to bring this up is because I just recently watched the movie The Fly, where a scientist creates a teleporting machine, but a fly gets into the machine with him. Their DNA crosses, and it turns him into a horrible fly monster, and he gets caught in a spider web and goes, help me, help me! And you get to spend like half an hour watching 1950s people walk around the living room and look for a fly. It's thrilling horror. Vincent Price is not in it nearly enough. But that reminded me of a very important news story that's not scientifically related, but is related to a fictional scientist by the name of Baxter Stockman. Casting has been announced for the part of Baxter Stockman in the upcoming Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. He will be played by none other than Tyler Perry.
Really?
Yep.
No way.
Yeah.
What's the subtitle of the movie going to be? Oh, shall know?
A problem I have with the fly paradox, where you have
I have so many problems with that. You want me to tell you everything that's wrong with that movie?
not necessarily wrong with the movie, but that you would teleport and just the fly would get mixed. Most of you is bacteria.
Yes. That's my problem number one.
And problem number two, most of the air is bacteria. Why isn't he just a giant amoeba just floating around gobbling up his wife? No. The 1950s is silly. Hate them.
He invents teleportation, and then rather than like telling the scientific community, he takes his wife out to the ballet.
It's like
That's probably the most unrealistic part.
you have some scientist who's like in his basement and he's doing little beakers and stuff, and then he's like, oh my goodness, this is it. I've cured cancer forever. We are going bowling right now. There's the one theory, right? They say that the only practical way to tie in teleportation is if you could basically copy someone's cells in the exact state they are now, destroy that person and recreate it somewhere else. When you recreated that new person, they would have all the same memories. They would function exactly the same as if that person had been there, but they're a new copy of that person, right? The old copy is now gone and destroyed and just does not exist anymore. But now there is another human being who is going to function exactly like that one would have.
Have you played Soma?
I have not.
So
That's the plot of it, basically, isn't it?
that's the plot, is that everyone's becoming a series of copies, and you have to grapple with what does it mean to be. Some of them, it's really intense. Like, you just sit there and, like, oh gosh, oh goodness.
There's a book that I read. One of my favorite authors, for some reason I can't think of his name right now, Thomas something.
Edison?
Is Thomas Edison, a famed author who wrote The Medusa and the Snail. I can't remember if it was in The Medusa and the Snail or one of his other books, but anyway, there's a chapter in it. I'm pretty sure it was a different book. Anyway, there's a chapter about the controversy surrounding cloning a human being, and he postulates that the only way to clone a person, to truly make a double of a person, is you can't just have the DNA. You can't just use the DNA, make another person who is the same on the nucleic acid level, because they have different experiences. There is some degree of nature and nurture in what makes a person. So you have to recreate their experiences, which means that you have to recreate every person they encounter. And to recreate every person they encounter, you have to recreate every person that those people encountered. So the only way to duplicate a person is to duplicate the universe. It's a Greek allegory, right? About there's a ship, I can't remember specifically which ship, but they replace a floorboard. They take out this one piece of wood, throw it away because it got cracked, put another board. All right, they go out, they have another battle. Now they've messed up a whole bunch of this ship. They take off a bunch of boards, replace them all, keep going. Wear and tear over time, they replace more of the ship. They replace the wheel, they replace the mast, they replace every part of this boat. Is it still the same boat? And I think that is the same with personalities. You can change your mind, but when do you become a new person? And even scientifically, your cells are replaced constantly, but there's still some innate you-ness to you.
Especially if your name is Eunice.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I guess we'll take a break, and we'll be back in just a minute.
It was a cool and misty night. You took me out for a line right away. I can feel something change. Open eyes, you can see I spring the beast out of me. When its tongue flicks across the pearly white frame. Disappeared in the sun. She said, "Don't you worry now." As you howl at the moon, howl at the
Jake, I know you have something.
Right. I have a lot of interest in Frankenstein. It was a character everyone knows, but I started taking a lot of interest when I was in high school. My high school put on a play adaptation of Frankenstein that was written by someone who writes soap operas. So, it was a very bad adaptation. And Dr. Frankenstein is explaining to his assistant that if you were to pass some electricity through a dead animal's leg, it'll twitch. And so, if you put a lot of electricity through a dead body, it'll come back to life. Which is not the way. That prompted me to then start reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus, which is a very good book. I don't ordinarily like books from the 19th century. At a certain point, books are just a little too old for me, but that one actually holds up pretty well. It's a pretty easy read. But the book doesn't really go into any detail about how the creature is brought to life, which I think is the right way to do it. So I wanted to know a little bit more about the science of how this all works. And it turns out that actually this bad play, although it phrased it very poorly, kind of was drawing from the right sources. It goes back to Luigi Galvani, he was using scissors, and there was an electrical storm happening outside. The scissors got a little static electricity in them, and he touched them to a dead frog's legs, and they twitched, a lot like it said in the play. And so this led him to do more experiments on frog legs, and he'd stick metal through frog legs and find ways to generate electricity that would make the legs twitch. His assumption was that the electricity was it came from life, and that living creatures generated electricity. And really what he was doing was, it was differential metals that were creating a boundary, and the legs were actually just a conductor, and you could see the effects of the electricity through their twitching, but it was the metal itself that was causing the twitch.
Can I tangent off of that really
Please.
quick? So, I don't know if any of you know, but if you put table salt on frog legs after they've been severed and stuff, they'll twitch a little bit.
That sounds like the Japanese dish, what's a taco something, where you put soy sauce on octopus.
Oh, well, I know what you're talking about.
Or you drop an octopus into a bowl of soy sauce and it starts flailing around.
Yeah, it's the ions.
Exactly. So Alessandro Volta saw Galvani's work, and this led him to do more experiments. And those of you who are familiar with Volta will know that this is what led to the creation of the battery. So actually, Mary Shelley was familiar with this work, and the top electrical researchers were actually friends with her father. So she was in Geneva, Switzerland with Lord Byron and Percy Shelley, who became her husband, and they were sitting around the fire at nights reading German ghost stories, talking about electricity making frog legs twitch, and maybe potentially this leading to being able to reanimate corpses. And so that actually is where the Frankenstein story originated. Now, the way that we did this in my high school production and the way that you've seen it in a lot of movies is Tesla coils and Jacob's ladders, things that shoot sparks in cool-looking ways being stuck all around the laboratory, which makes no scientific sense, but it looks neat. It's interesting that even though the book does not explicitly make this connection, somehow everyone understands the bridge between electricity and reanimating Frankenstein.
Well, Frankenstein's monster.
Frankenstein's monster.
I had been corrected before.
It is kind of an interesting thing. Like, it's just so easy to accept. It's like, yeah, you dead thing and you shoot with a lightning bolt. It's an alive thing, probably.
Which doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
Well, this may stem from the prevailing idea. It was like 1814-ish when this was published, and they were into spiritualism, and I guess they might have seen electricity as like life essence, and they were like, this thing is devoid of life essence, let's add some more.
That's exactly right. There is something about that in my research, about that kind of thought factoring into it. Which,
not scientifically valid.
no, but when you're feeling around, when you don't know how this stuff works,
Yeah.
you kind of try out anything.
Well, it's not too far off, though. I mean,
It's
there's
not,
a lot
no.
of electricity involved in life. Like,
Yeah, it's essential to life. You have to,
Yeah.
it's what's making your cells move and communicate with each other.
Your brain's like doing all sorts of electrical stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like goes away, right? When you clock out, it's like
Yeah.
the electricity in your brain quiets down and stops doing stuff.
And defibrillators and
Yeah.
we've been able to take this information and actually we do use it to keep life going. I want to talk a little bit more about this play that we did, though. It was terrible. But my favorite thing was we did a production. We brought in one of the local junior highs and put on a show for them. And it was a bunch of kids who were just glad to be out of school, but didn't care about our bad play at all and weren't going to be polite or considerate to us. They didn't care. Which angered the rest of the cast, but I thought it was hilarious. And the best part was when the Frankenstein's monster gets revenge on the grave robbers and picks one up and starts shaking them around and their neck snaps. And it's supposed to be this moment where, neck snap. But instead, all the junior high kids go, oh!
you just got.
And that's my favorite Frankenstein story.
That reminds me of when I went to go see Alien vs. Predator in theaters. There was a similar moment where there's this last-minute, spoiler alert, section where someone's about to be killed by an alien, and then out of nowhere the Predator comes up and does this super slow motion, like stab through the head type of a thing. And you're supposed to be like, oh, that's awesome. And everyone in the theater simultaneously, this is like opening weekend, bursts out laughing. It's like, come on, guys. Let's class it up a little. Anyway, Sleepy Hollow, as we all know, is a story by Washington Irving.
Irving Washington.
Irving Washington. It's a story about a guy. It doesn't really matter what the story is. It's dumb. There's a guy who rides a horse and he doesn't have a head. That's the important part. This is actually sort of a mythological thing that goes back a while in European folklore, specifically in the British Isles. You have Dullahan, who is an Irish fairy with no head. You have Ewan, who is a Scottish warrior who gets decapitated in battle but lives on. Even Sir Gawain in The Green Knight gets his head chopped off and he puts it right back on. It's a little different, but...
There's a few saints that do it too.
Yeah, there's a couple of Grimm's fairy tales where there are headless horsemen of some sort. But is this a possible thing that could actually happen? Could there actually be a headless horseman? Could we physically do this? Unfortunately...
Are we going to go out on location and find out? I don't like where this is leading.
Adam and Jamie Heineman, they got married.
Wait, don't you need your main character to be like a little spotted dog? Am I thinking of the wrong story? Like, that's how I experienced Sleepy Hollow. I don't know, that might be different for everyone out there, but...
Oh, I think we were going Paranorman. But no, we're doing...
I was doing Wishbone.
Wishbone, yeah.
Wow. That's of course you were. Yep.
but I was going... My Sleepy Hollow experience was the Disney Ichabod Crane.
I haven't seen that. I've never seen any adaptation. I don't know anything about Sleepy Hollow except there's a horse.
I read this much story, and I was really disappointed. It's not that scary. It's kind of like reading like Robert W. Chambers. You're like, oh, this is going to be super spooky. It inspired H.P. Lovecraft. And you're like, oh, this is kind of an interesting thought experiment. But you're like, I'm not scared.
Are you scared of H.P. Lovecraft?
Not really either. Like, I get like there are parts of it that are like, oh, this could be happening. Maybe not really.
That's where I don't like horror, or really I don't like comedy that's like that either. Where it's like, wouldn't it be scary if this happened? Like I can agree with you, but it's not going to give me a visceral reaction of fear. Or if like wouldn't it be crazy if somebody came into your office and did this? Well, no. I mean, it would be, but I'm not in that office, so I'm not going to laugh about
You
it.
can't relate.
Yeah, I can relate, but I can't actually... I'm not getting the reaction.
Okay.
I thought The Office was pretty funny.
Well, yeah, the Ricky Gervais, the UK one.
I thought they were both pretty good.
You were wrong about one of them.
I thought the Portuguese one was pretty funny.
I like the H.P.
Endless
Lovecraft
fun.
office. That's my favorite one.
Where Cthulhu...
Every time Dwight comes in,
Cthulhu.
he's like sacrificing people to the elder gods, and they're just like looks at the
Classic
camera.
Cthulhu sitting, doing the interview, just going...
You don't have to be crazy to work here.
But you might end up that way. Don't look straight into his eyes. He'll take your soul.
They like put his stapler in like blood jelly.
Anyway,
Eats the jelly.
Headless Equestrians.
Whoa. I'm going to take one step back. Headless equestrians? Like the horse?
Is it?
Equines is what you're thinking.
Equine,
Equestrians ride horses.
Okay. The
Yes.
equestrian class of Romans.
So there are no real documented cases of people losing their heads and surviving. There are a couple of apocryphal stories about heads surviving without bodies, like in the French Revolution.
Oh, the blinking.
Yeah, the blinking and stuff like that. It's mostly assumed that those stories were made up or embellished. But in the animal kingdom, there is an example that can sort of shed some light on this problem, which is Mike the Headless Chicken. Perhaps you've heard of him.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
AKA Miracle Mike. He was a Wyandotte chicken. He lived from April 1945 to March of 1947.
Oh,
Lloyd Olson of Fruita, Colorado, was going to butcher a chicken for dinner, and he missed the jugular vein and brainstem of the chicken, and it got up and flew up into a tree. That's not too uncommon for chickens.
No.
The thing that was uncommon is that this chicken survived. Lloyd decided, well, I mean, if he's going to stick around, I guess I don't really have the heart to kill him. Now that he's, yeah. So he decided to keep him alive, and he became like a sideshow attraction. He would feed the chicken milk and water via a dropper, and put in like small grains of corn into its belly as well for fiber, I guess.
Do you like shoot it in there like a basketball kind of hoop, or just try to throw it in his spare time and try to get it in the neck?
I guess probably not.
That's so thoughtful, though. You're like, oh, you need a little fiber. Well, everyone needs a little fiber.
Well, especially when you're feeding a chicken milk. I imagine that they can't really digest that very well.
This is a long time ago. They had different
It
standards.
worked for 2 years. Well, I know how the story ends.
Yeah. So, after he'd been decapitated, he would preen, he would peck for food, even though obviously no head, but chicken would try and crow. Again, very unsuccessfully, but it would gurgle. It would sort of walk around, and it was capable of perching, which I assume just means not moving in a controlled way. I don't really understand what that means for a bird.
How does it not get like infection and whatever? Like I'm assuming there's just like this wound,
Yes.
just open.
Yeah, so there was a clot that stopped the jugular or whatever from bleeding out, and then they had special tubes for feeding and cleaning the chicken. So when they took it around on the, what would you call that? Circus.
Circuit,
Yeah, they would be cleaning it out every night, and that's actually what killed it. Was they had shipped off the feeding and cleaning tubes for the chicken to somewhere else, and one night after they had done that, the chicken started choking on some food that they had fed it, and they had no way to help it out, so the chicken died, and that was the end of it. And actually, there's some weird story about how they lied about it for a while, and they said, like, oh, I sold him, he's not really dead. Which I don't know really why you would say that, because you don't have the chicken anymore, and also there's no reason to, like, was it a cruelty thing they were worried about? I don't
Is there chicken stock?
Well,
Like
in the 40s, I don't know. Maybe there was a paid appearance and he was, like, they were getting, like, a subsidy.
This headless chicken died. Nobody's going to believe this is an accident.
I've got $50,000 riding on the headless chicken dying in 3 years. It's only been 2 years. Keep playing along.
We sold him to a headless chicken collector. He just cuts the heads off of chickens. Most of them are dead.
But
His white whale is...
chicken.
Has anyone deliberately tried to reproduce this? I guess we don't have the answer to that.
So I've heard there's like
I do
those
not.
like.
Has anyone in this blanket fort deliberately tried to reproduce this?
No.
Me specifically, myself, no. But my cousin's friend.
My cousin's friend who goes to a different school.
Ozzy Osbourne tried it with bats.
I was listening to an interview
I wouldn't
and
decapitate a chicken with a bat. Blunt instruments are not the way to go.
He got scared in the middle of the night, and he keeps a bat by his dead.
I think it was Ozzy Osbourne. It might have been Alice in Chains. Actually, I think it was Alice in Chains. But someone, like the reviewer said that he grabbed a chicken and just ripped its head off in the middle of a show.
Oh, yeah.
And that apparently never happened. But the producer was like, "Did you do this?" And he said, "No, I didn't." It's like, "Don't tell anyone you didn't, because it's making us money."
Yeah. Alice Cooper. Is that who
Alice
it was?
Cooper.
It was Alice Cooper.
That's who I meant. I said Alice in Chains. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Alice in Chains. I missed, or maybe
You should be apologizing to Alice Cooper.
I'm sorry, Alice Cooper.
You don't mess with Alice Cooper. No more Mr. Nice Guy.
Well, I apologized.
No more Mr. Clean.
Oh,
School's
does
out
he have stuff?
for summer.
But what I think is really interesting that everything I think of as chicken doing, like the pecking and the perching, is based in the brainstem, which is what we usually refer to as our reptile brain, our most basic instincts. Like if we
Yeah.
were to be just our brainstem, we would breathe, our heart would beat, our kidneys would work, our liver would do its stuff. I don't know if our integumentary system would function as normal, because that needs muscle movement, and that's in the cerebellum.
It would be the
Yeah,
Walking
actually,
Dead.
that's the point I was getting to here, is it possible for a human to do this? Yes, we could have a brainstem theoretically be the only part of our brain left, but muscle memory is controlled by the cerebellum, so that person would not be able to ride a horse.
You just like kind of
Right.
strap him up there.
I was going to say, if I just strap you up on a horse and you're headless,
Yes.
I put your hands in the thing, and while the horse is running, you look like you're doing the right stuff. I guess you're technically a horseman, because you're still controlling the horse, sort of.
I don't think that counts. I think that
That you have to be consciously controlling the horse.
You have to be able to hold
Yeah.
up the jack-o'-lantern.
And then throw it at
Is that what
Crane.
he does? I don't know.
And then get married.
well,
So it's basically how much of the brain can you cut away and still ride a horse? So like the mostly headless horseman with just like an amygdala sitting on top of it or something.
The amygdala just flapping around in the wind.
It's pretty spooky.
You gotta bolt that down, Ryder. Oh my goodness.
I'll patent it.
Hey. Make sure to tape it down.
Tape it down to my neck stem. Maybe put it in a little leather pouch.
Is that the end of literary or of
science fiction, yeah.
okay?
So,
Weird Science is up.
weird science.
Weird Science. That sounds very much like a zombie when you're talking about a human being walking around with no higher function, just the instincts, just the actions. And so I wanted to know a little bit more about zombies, and I found the intersection between zombies and one of my fears as somebody who did live in Texas for far too many years, cockroaches, which are everywhere. They're not real cockroaches, but everyone calls them cockroaches, so they're cockroaches, except they fly.
Oh, cicada?
No, they're not cicadas.
Oh.
No, I don't know what the actual name of them is. It doesn't matter because nobody calls them what the real name is. Everyone calls them roaches, and they're disgusting, and you can smash them with a shoe, and they'll just keep on terrorizing you and flying on your face. They're the worst, and they horrify me. But there are actually, you may have heard of this, zombie roaches. There's a wasp called the jewel wasp, which first what it does is it injects a poison between the roach's front legs. I assume that means like right in the middle of the back. There were pictures on this article that I removed so I wouldn't have to look at them. It paralyzes the roach's legs so that the roach can't get away because it's actually much smaller than the cockroach. It then moves up to the roach's head and injects the same venom into a specific part of the brain. This allows the wasp to sort of steer the roach and makes the roach walk into... This is where it starts turning into an Edgar Allan Poe story. It moves it off out of the way so it'll go somewhere where the roach won't get eaten by a bird or something. It lays an egg on one of the roach's back legs and then starts building a wall of little rocks around the roach. So the roach is being buried alive under its zombie mind control venom with a little egg on its leg. The egg then hatches once it's all enclosed and climbs up into the roach, clears things out, and then makes like a cocoon sort of thing for the next month. So it's now this baby growing to full adult wasp status inside of a cleared out dead roach and eating up the hemolymph, which is sort of roach equivalent blood. So it's nutrient packed. It provides a nice safe space for the wasp to grow to maturity, and then it emerges out of the back. There have been scientific experiments where they've removed the egg from the roach's leg, and after a little while, the roach is able to return to normal function. But otherwise, the wasp steers it to where it wants it to go, cast of Amontillado it into place, and then lets its young devour the roach from the inside. Now, where it starts getting really spooky, this is not directly related, but, I mean, wasps making zombie insects, that's one thing. But what about our nation's scientists? There are... Obviously, we have a lot of use for robots that can sneak into places for all kinds of uses. Maybe the military wants to use robots to go check on stuff. We've developed these robot suits that you strap onto a roach's back. It injects some little prongs into the roach's brain, which can then, at will, with the press of a button, paralyze the middle leg on the right or left side of the roach's body, depending on which impulse you give it. And they're able to then steer the roach. And they can give them these little backpacks that have like a camera or sensor or whatever. So the roach is still alive. The roach is still conscious and somewhat in control. They haven't nailed the science yet. It only works about 60 to 70% of the time that they can accurately steer this roach. But it's much more reliable than a tiny robot. It has all of the survival instincts and movement capabilities of a real life roach, because it is. It can sneak into small places, can survive anything, and crawl up my leg. This is sci-fi horror movie reality. Roaches are awful, and we're making them awfuler by turning them into our science military bidding zombies.
I was actually going to bring that second part up if you weren't, because I've actually seen the YouTube video where the guy
I could not watch that.
Did you know it was there, or did you just pass it up?
Would have assumed that there are videos, but like I said, I deleted the pictures from these articles because I don't want to look at them.
They bug you?
But
Yes, they do.
yeah, the guy's like super matter of fact about it. It's like you can order a kit offline for this thing, and he's like, yeah, you can dip your roach in some ice water so he doesn't move around as much, and then you clip this antenna, and you clip off their.
That's a different. There's the method pulling on the antenna or something. You just like ratatouille them around where you want them to go. But then there's also the one where you use their brain, and then it sounds like you're talking about a combination of the two.
Yeah, like they cut off the antennas, and then they stick wires inside the antennas, so like it hot wires their like antenna stuff. And he does say like they get resistant to it as well. Like if you just keep telling it to go left, then they're like, you know what, I don't need to listen to you anymore, Dad, or something. They just like get all rebellious and stop. It just stops working after a while.
And you have to put them down.
You have to put it back in their roach.
Get a fresh roach and use that as your robot zombie.
Yeah, it was really weird because like he got a lot of hate for it. People are like, whatever, but yeah, he takes his little sandpaper and sands off some of the wax on the wings, and then like hot glues it or something.
Yeah, because if you just try to put it right on the wings, they have that waxy back, and it won't stick.
How big were the roaches he was using?
I don't remember. I think they might have been Madagascar ones. Like they had to be some.
Have you guys seen I want to say it was the third season of The Tester, of Sony's TV show, where they were looking for the next video game tester to work at PlayStation. That was the award on this reality TV show. But the first episode of either the second or the third season, they put this glass box on the contestants' heads and fill it with these hissing, smelly Madagascar roaches, and then make them have a job interview while roaches are crawling in their mouth. It's the worst thing I've ever seen.
The whole
show.
I was gonna say that show just has the weirdest like premise, prize, and execution out of anything.
It taught me that parrots are zygodactyl. I have one more story for you. This ties into a movie that I have never seen any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies until just last night. I watched A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. So the part of Freddy Krueger was kind of based on this guy who stood outside of Wes Craven's house one time when he was young and looked in the window, and that creeped him out. But the other part of this actually ties into something from real life and from science, dealing with Hmong immigrants. What? I looked up pronunciation of it, and apparently it's Hmong.
Okay.
Hmong. I hope I'm getting that right.
That's interesting.
Are you guys familiar with sleep paralysis? Has anyone experienced sleep paralysis?
I've not.
I've heard lots about it, but I haven't experienced it.
I haven't had it in a little while, but I have had it quite a few times in my life, which is why you should never, ever sleep. Basically, when you are asleep, your brain releases a chemical that paralyzes your body so that you're not moving around. Sleepwalking is if you don't have the right balance of this chemical, your body gets up and moves around, but you're still not conscious. Sleep paralysis is the opposite. It is where you are fully conscious and you are paralyzed, often accompanied by feeling this evil presence, feeling the sense that there's some great, terrible person or force or something coming for you or just outside of your view, and there's nothing that you can do to get up and stop it. You are unable to move. It's not that great. I don't recommend it. There's a documentary on Netflix right now, or like half documentary called The Nightmare. I watched about half of it. I wasn't that impressed. But if you want to know more about sleep paralysis, check that out. You might learn something. I've already learned enough from real life. So, early 80s, sometime in the 80s, immigrants from Laos in America began to die suddenly in their sleep. And this became known as sudden unexpected nocturnal death syndrome, or SUNS. And there was no real known cause. They were just dying in their sleep. More recently, an author named Shelley Adler put out a book based on interviews with Hmong people. It's called Sleep Paralysis, Nightmares, Nocebos, and the Mind-Body Connection. What was happening to these people was they were experiencing a combination of sleep paralysis and a cultural belief that they weren't worshiping properly, performing religious rituals. And so they believed they were going to be punished in their sleep. And then stories were getting out of people in similar situations dying in their sleep. So the fear actually gave their beliefs enough power to kill them in their sleep. And that is what inspired Freddy Krueger, this guy with a knife glove who comes and kills you in your sleep and there's no way you can get out of it. Sleep paralysis led to A Nightmare on Elm Street and Insidious and probably some other horror movies that I haven't made the connection on. But real life, scary, bad dreams can kill you, but probably won't.
The power of the mind.
Yes.
And we should talk to the guys over at Dreamcast about this.
Yeah. TralalaRadioNetwork@gmail.com. They've been low on submissions, so Dreamcast, email them. That's my story. I don't know if we can make... I have names for what they call sleep paralysis in different cultures. The witch riding on your back, crushing demon, held down by a shadow, ghost demon, bound or fastened in metal.
That... Oh.
But a lot of people describe it as some kind of evil demon or witch or hag, old hag, sitting on their chest and crushing them.
I don't remember the situation, but someone was telling a story. She often experienced sleep paralysis, and she said it was terrifying, it was awful, and for a long time she didn't experience it. When she was little, her and her family went, and they were staying in a hotel, and her and her sister were sleeping in the same bed, and she started experiencing sleep paralysis, and she was...
Is this the episode of Baby Geniuses?
This might be the episode of Baby Geniuses.
I think
but she was convinced there was a demon just off to the side, like sitting there getting ready to kill her sister for whatever reason. And then her father or mother, like, started doing rosaries over her, essentially. Probably not exactly rosaries, but they were praying to banish the demon, and then she regained motion.
It's a weird thing. Like, I experienced it for years without knowing that it was a common thing or had a name, or I didn't even really think anything of it. Like, it was, I guess some people are so scared of it that they die. I was just like, oh, that's unpleasant, but I didn't know it was anything more than that.
Yeah, I get Charlie horses when I'm sleeping. But,
Oh, the old mare.
She comes to bite you in the sleep.
The old mare sits on your leg.
There was an SCP that if you have an exposed foot and you're in a bed that's been affected by the SCP, he gives you sleep paralysis, and then he comes up and then he starts carving parts of your heel off until morning. Then he takes them away.
Oh.
And depending on how close it is to morning, he'll go all the way up your leg.
what's SCP?
Secure, Contain, Protect. It's a online wiki. It's in this very specific set of guidelines. Like, it's an organization that's there to find anomalies and secure them, contain them from the public, and then protect the anomaly. So they want to make the anomaly as comfortable as possible. It's usually associated with a person or someone's fear. Some of them are funny. It's kind of creepypasta-y. I went down a rabbit hole. There's someone online who reads them as SCP readings. She reads them on YouTube, and I just, like a little quick podcast, 10 minutes. Then she gives a little commentary, and she's like, I hate cats. This thing about cats is really scary for me. I'm like, yeah, I like cats. But this is also very scary to me. Like, there's one that it looks like a little kitty, but it's actually a Bengal tiger. It has a mimetic effect that makes you want to go pet it and then talk to it. Then it spins around and eats you.
There's a bear trap that makes you think it's a sandwich. So you walk over to it and you lose your hand.
Yeah, that's that kind of stuff.
Creepypastas for me always have that, like, distinct moment where, like, it's either, sometimes it's in the second sentence, sometimes it's in the second paragraph, but I'm like, oh yeah, and then I just stop reading immediately. Yeah, never mind. It's very
Oh yeah, I guess
opposite.
this would be scary if it were real.
Yeah.
I guess that's why this is so helpful, is because she's reading it and she's not going to stop because you're like, oh, I've logged out. But some of them are like creepy, like there's the child in the window and he like is in the corner of the window and you can't quite see his features, but he's staring at you. And I don't like the idea of being watched. It's very...
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's just... I also have this really weird problem where I just start staring at people And so it's probably a reflection of myself. I obsess and I fixate and I just can't quite break eye contact, and then I have to look somewhere else. But tangent!
Q&A! So let me ask you this. Are horror movies or stories or creepypasta, like, is any of that effective to you? Games?
Yes. I get spooked really easily. Like, especially if it's like a demonic thing that haunts me for weeks. Like a
Demonic, like you watch a movie with like an exorcist or a...
Or paranormal activity. Specifically, the first one really got me. I don't know why. It's just, it's the idea that there's nothing I can do to stop it. I guess it's the loss of control that's the problem.
Someone had this breakdown of the difference between terror and horror and some other kind of thing. And terror is... I'm probably going to get this backwards, but terror is the anticipation, the feeling that, oh, something is going to happen that is going to be terrible. And horror is seeing that thing happen. And I don't like horror. I don't like seeing people get cut open and stuff, but I don't think it's really that scary. But terror, I think, is very interesting, and I enjoyed that. Psycho is very good. Yeah. But on the other hand, I never want to see Saw, because that's just all horror.
Oh, I love Saw.
You of all people love Saw?
I love Saw. I went into Saw thinking, like, are we seriously going to go see this movie? This seems so stupid. And then I came out a believer. I loved it. The sequels are bad, but that first movie is great. And the game was okay. I only played a little bit of it, but it was okay.
Wait, you want to play a game?
I woke up and I was totally paralyzed.
And he was right there.
It was this ironic trap that exposed all of my weaknesses as a human being and made me appreciate life. I came out a changed person. The first Saw is a good movie. I think you might have to go into it expecting it to be a bad movie. I think if you go in expecting a good movie, you might be disappointed, but if your expectations are really low, maybe you'll like it.
Okay.
I love horror movies. I like gruesome horror movies. I love tense horror movies. I don't get scared of horror movies, though. I mostly laugh at them.
That's something interesting is, like, the terror versus horror thing is the scariest monsters is always the one where they don't tell you what it is, so your imagination kind of runs wild on it, right? Yeah. Like, they leave it up to you. It would be interesting to, or maybe I'm completely wrong here, but it seems like that's much less prevalent in, like, happier movies. There's no, like, and then the most exciting happy thing of all, and then they just leave it, like, open for you to fill it in with your happy thing.
What's really interesting about horror movies is that they are designed to get a reaction. In good comedy, you're not going for the laugh. The harder you try for the laugh, the more desperate it comes across. It just seems like this sad flailing and just waiting for someone to... You're creating funny situations, you're delivering good witticisms or whatever, but your goal is not, I'm going to make you laugh, I'm going to make you cry, because once you make that your goal, you're setting yourself up to fail. Now, if your goal is, I'm going to embody this character, I am going to deliver these lines believably, I am going to create an absurd situation, once you actually have a goal where you are performing an action, then you have a chance at actually getting those reactions. But horror is one of the few places where it is just, I want this person to respond in this physical way.
You know what? I think that's part of the reason why I don't like horror films is because there's this whole, like, level of machismo on top of them where someone is trying to scare me and they're trying to make me, like, jump, but I'm supposed to not be frightened by it because that's, like, oh, you're weak if you get frightened by this thing, but also at the same time, it's the good
If you
reaction.
do exactly what they want you to do, then you're bad. It's my problem with, like, BioShock or Call of Duty or any of those where it's like, huh? You killed the guy. Well, yeah, you gave me a gun and no other choice. You put me in a straight corridor and gave me a gun. Yes, I killed him. Yep, in a video game. That's what I do.
Yeah.
That's why I like horror games more than I like horror movies, or I find them more effective. I like horror movies a lot anyway, but in a horror movie, you're saying, don't go in there, like yelling or laughing at the idiot who's doing the stupid thing. In horror games, you are the one being an idiot, and you have the option to just turn off the game. If you don't want to get scared, you turn off the game. You don't play it. So you have no one to blame but yourself. There's a little bit more randomness because it's not directed, it's not perfectly timed. The scare could come at any minute. You have some element of control. I think a lot of the most effective horror games are where you're just walking around empty spaces and a dog might burst out or a zombie might jump out at you and you don't know when it's going to come or even if it's going to come, and they lull you into a sense of complacency. And a movie needs to be an hour and a half long. A game can be 20 hours long. So they can just take as much time having you do nothing and feeling calm and feeling like you have all the guns and first aid spray. Really, you're just setting yourself up to get scared.
I like a lot of those, and I know it's been done to death, and now 1 million people played it, and there's blah, 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 blah. But I enjoyed the first time I played through Amnesia because there were a lot of games at the time, like Dead Space, that were like, this is a horror game, but then they give you like a shotgun that can like explode a monster and like cut everything in half, and you're like, yeah, but you should be super scared. And then, I know there were probably lots of games, but it was the first game that I played where it was like, alright, there's a spooky, scary monster, are you ready? And I'm like, yeah, okay, what do I do? Well, here's a lantern. I'm like, okay, but like, what do I do against the monster? Like, you can't do anything. That's just your story, is you can run and you can hide, but that thing will eviscerate you if it catches you. And so it sort of turned it on its head where it's not like, I sure hope something big and scary that I can't shoot with my gun comes along, where it's like, anything is terrifying because you're just a piece of tissue paper compared to everything.
The same company actually released that Soma game, and you also don't have any weapons, and you're just wandering around, and there's some monsters that if they hear you make a sound, they instantaneously go to where the sound was, and you're just sitting there in the corner going, please don't see me, please don't see me. And then there's somewhere, if you look at them, they want to kill you. So, like, you just have to stare at the ground and walk around them.
So let's go around. Scariest monster.
I think I get particularly affected by the Thing monsters or whatever, like shapeshifters and whatever, because like those are the one where it's not a giant scary thing chasing you through a corridor at all times. It's now the few people that you have left to trust or whatever, you now cannot trust them, and someone maybe close to you maybe just wants to, cut your head off if you turn around, but you don't know. I think those are pretty scary.
Somebody needs to make a good game out of John Carpenter's The Thing, not the one that they already made that was not good.
I guess I'm most afraid of, like I said earlier, demon things. Like, just the idea that there might be an unseen entity that I can't do anything about. It's just there with me in the room, sitting there waiting for its moment to strike.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of similar, where I remember hearing about gang initiation rituals where people will hide under cars and then like slash people's Achilles tendons.
Oh yeah,
that is super scary to me, and probably also why spiders are so scary, because they're completely silent. Right? There's this thing that can mess you up, and you just have no idea that they're even there. You might think they're a drop of water on your hand or something.
Did that Achilles tendon stuff actually happen? Like, I know, like the gangs like coming up and sticking you with drugs, and now you're an addict and you got to buy from them forever. Like, that's just completely fake.
That was an exaggerated story from, like, I think the 90s.
But it's still terrifying.
But no, yeah, the idea of it is terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, it's the monster under the bed.
The randomness.
I wouldn't put it past them, though. Like, but at the same time,
it might have happened once, but I don't think it's like
gangs exist. You know they're up to no good. You know that you could be harmed, and you know that you're completely ill-equipped to do anything about it. It would affect you forever.
Women in jackets with their hands in their pockets, women or men for that matter, but like if they're wearing a poofy jacket with their hands in their pockets, I switch to the other side of the street regardless. At night. It's just,
so we are the greatest monsters, what I'm hearing.
It's women and men if they're in poofy jackets.
But you led with women, and that's really
because I was. It's specifically small women who are smaller than me, because initially you think they're not a threat to you, but then they end up pulling their shiv out, and they're like, okay, give me all your stuff.
That's interesting.
And then I know I can't out sprint her. Like,
so it's still that the threat coming from
an unknown source.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a big scary man, like, okay, yeah, you're gonna kill me. But a tiny, or a regular sized woman for that matter, but just walking.
Weapons and violence are scary no matter what, but when I don't have enough time to brace, like I can just walk over to the Bartels, and then they're like, oh, I can't get that guy, he's gonna go buy some juicy fruit and then chill for a second.
I think I kind of want to change my answer. In movies, the shapeshifter, in like real life spooky things, it's the straw man, like psychopath who's like, I wonder who I'm gonna get today, and like picks his finger in the phone book and happens to go to my house and like kicks down my door and is like, today's the day.
Navin R. Johnson.
Yeah, it's always the things that's just random. You're like, you can't protect against it. Like, it's like, oh, he's gonna kill blonde men who have eyebrows still. Okay, that's me. So I guess I'm gonna die.
So I think what we're
afraid of prejudice.
Yeah, I'm afraid of we should all be afraid of prejudice.
Us poor white boys really have it hard.
I think what we can all really boil everything down to is the thing that we're all most afraid of is
emotional vulnerability. Yep.
I was gonna say gamma ray bursts, but like that's also pretty...
I haven't given my answer yet.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
All right, real life, it's roaches and clowns. But if we're including fiction in all of this, it's that ghost whale blubba from Bubble Bobble. Dun, 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 dun. When you're running low on time, if you haven't killed all the enemies, Blubba comes out and he'll mess you up.
Oh, is it the ghost one?
It's a ghost whale.
Yeah.
He has red eyes.
I didn't know that was a whale.
Yeah.
That's kind of
It's horrifying.
So if we're gonna do actual things
Dun.
outside of random events, it's actually heights, specifically being supported by ropes. So like a rope bridge, but like metal suspension bridges, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But like just getting close to edge, I'm like, I should just jump. Is what goes through my head.
Intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts are horrifying.
I just have all these weird thoughts like, I could kick this woman to the street. And I'm like, stop. Just go away. And then sometimes those internal thoughts just come out of my mouth. I'm like, what? Why would you say that?
I feel like they might actually keep you safe, though. Like, just horrifying yourself all the time is maybe good for you.
I'm convinced that I'm
Like,
going to do something
I just have
terrible.
Those paper cutters, like, in a school.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I have the most vivid images anytime I see one of those. And I think, like, I could just do this right now. And I'm so horrified of it, and I think that's what keeps me safe.
Anytime I'm cutting onions, I'm just like, I can cut my hand off. That's a thing I can do. That's an option I have. And then for some reason, I'm like, why are you doing this to me? I have no idea what that is.
Sometimes I'm in the supermarket and I'm walking around, and then I look off to my right, and I see like Geely on sale, and I'm like, I could just watch that movie. Like, I could just buy it, and I could go home and I could watch it, and then I'm like,
Thank goodness. Oh, writer.
I apologize for like the 10-year punchline.
I was just about to
Like, there's so many movies I could have picked, but
Geely.
Geely. I've actually seen that movie, so I can comment on it.
Well, I think it's fitting that you picked a dead horse. Dead horses are kind of spooky.
If you're gonna beat a horse, let it be a dead one.
Yeah. Halloween.
So I guess to continue with questions, do you guys have like a YouTube series that you guys I think are super spooky? I talked about my SCP readings, but
PewDiePie.
Okay, we're not talking.
He's coming to take us all.
We're not talking.
All
Gorefest.
hail Emperor PewDiePie.
Come on, bruh.
Oh, I haven't actually ever seen.
I accidentally clicked on one once.
I was tempted, like he was in my recently uploaded in genres that you may like. I'm like, but it's doing a photoshopped picture of your face going, that's doing a screamy face.
Oh, you mean every YouTube video now?
Yeah, every YouTube video now, I refuse to click on them.
I was looking up some specific game, and I clicked on a video, and I was like, wow, this is annoying. What is this? Why is this so obnoxious? And then I scrolled down and saw PewDiePie. I had no idea. So I am not just hating because he's popular. Let's dispel that. He
Jake
just...
hates everything the same, so that makes him a good person.
Yes.
Besides for Saw.
Saw's pretty good. Saw 2 is pretty dumb. That has some, like, oh man, that has some stomach-turning
Have you
scenes.
seen Saw 3D?
I want to say I saw the first 3 of them, but I might have seen the first 4.
Saw 3D is really boring.
I did not see Saw 3D.
Until Dawn. Yeah, I'm gonna plug that quick.
Yeah. Just talking scary things. I don't know. They don't have movie recommendations or games.
That's not Dusk Until Dawn. What are we talking about?
Until Dawn.
Until
The
Dawn.
game.
It's the game that's teenage horror slasher
Oh, right, yeah.
recreation. It gives you all the choices and whatnot. That'd be something I'd watch.
I've heard really good things about that. I would not mind checking it out. Have you played Maniac Mansion?
I have not.
I feel like there's probably a lot of similarity there, except they're also very different. Maniac Mansion is one of my favorites. I love that game.
Ron Gilbert,
Ron Gilbert.
LucasArts.
Putting a hamster in a microwave.
To answer your question about YouTube videos that are horrific, do you guys remember a couple months ago there was this news story about this game that was, and I'm doing air quotes here, from the deep web?
yes.
Sad Satan.
Was that? Yeah, that was it.
Yeah,
And someone
like it has,
discovered
like,
it.
children crying in the background.
I don't buy that it's actually discovered on the internet in the deep web. I think that someone made it and like came up with that backstory. But just watching playthrough videos of it, it's extremely unsettling.
It's
and I don't know
emotionally
why.
distressing. Like, well, in the background, there's children screaming and crying, and I don't know if they're...
I wasn't even hearing anyone crying or anything like that. It was just like low bass noises and flickering triangles. It was just like a really badly made game, but for some reason it was really unsettling. I couldn't place why.
There's definitely a science to like that I'm sure people study at some point, but like certain tones and whatnot just make us uneasy. Like I know it's below the range or whatever. There's like just below where we can hear, if you play that, it makes us freak out and like nervous and stuff.
And you can set up a Pavlovian response. They did that with Paranormal Activity. They play a really, really barely audible bass tone just before the demon or whatever it is comes. It was just woo, 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 woo. And so you got set up because they would do that, and they would do scary thing, scary thing, scary thing, and then they just do the sound and then nothing. That sound still makes me a little anxious. For those of you who haven't seen any gameplay of Sad Satan, I don't really suggest finding it, but you start off in like a dark hallway and you just sort of start walking, and every now and again there'll be still images that'll flash onto the screen. It'll be like Aleister Crowley with the pentagram drawn on his forehead just standing there looking at you, and then it'll disappear. Yeah, I don't buy that it was from the deep web. Someone might have put it there now, but...
First of all, I don't even buy that this deep web... People keep saying, "Oh, there's the deep web. It really exists. It's a thing. You don't think it. No one knows about it." And so there's just like websites that don't have links on Google. Is that the deep web?
I think it's just
Bitcoins.
I think that there's a special protocol you need from like your web browser.
Yeah,
so.
Like Tor or whatever.
As far as I know about it, it's just websites that are unlisted, and because they're unlisted, you get a bunch of really bad stuff, because then that's where people can like congregate that don't want to be found or something.
Yeah, I've heard like actual stories of you look within this one web. It looks like a boring web forum or something, and then you type in the secret address within it, and then you find governments trading nuclear weapons or robot roaches.
I don't doubt that there is something that you could identify as being the deep web.
It's very easy to make that leap from, oh, I heard this story about something, to let's make up lots of conspiracies.
Yeah, like there's like a forum called like badstuff.net, and then people go there like, I killed my neighbor today, what do you think? I don't think there's like a satanic forum or something.
Well, there's those on the regular web. Writer.
The shallow web.
Shallow.
Oh my goodness.
The kitty, the
basic
Just cat pictures, the shallow web.
AOL homepage.
It's just pictures of kittens like, this kitty loves Satan. Oh.
Have you gotten through your list? Do you want to read things?
Robert W. Chambers, The King in Yellow, not terribly spooky, but a lot of the foundation for classic horror is in that series of short stories. The King in Yellow is a really interesting thought experiment. It also talks about 1914 America as an empire, and we still have hussars for some reason. It's great. I liked it.
Hussars?
Hussars.
Oh, nice.
The old grenadier?
Huskers, the Age of Empires unit.
Yeah, hussars.
Yeah. Playing at the University of Washington football stadium.
Oh, they were marching around and people were going to suicide booths, just like in Futurama.
Lewis Thomas. That's the author. He wrote that one book and the other book. He wrote a lot of books. They're all good. Read them all.
On a sadder note, Bob, the science fish, has left us.
He's in that test tube in the sky now.
He's in
a better place.
He's in a better place. So I have a brief eulogy written for Bob, the science fish. His loving father, Andreas, was not able to be with us today, and he said that he came into this world for like $3, dog, and he was in a loving enclosure that was worth more than he was, and he died as he lived, surrounded in his own feces, about a month after he entered this and entered our lives. He may or may not have been sacrificed to Ori, the cute, adorable dog. That is an unconfirmed rumor. Does anyone have anything they want to?
I think we can all say we live in enclosures that are more pricey than we are.
And really, our lives are just the filth that we accumulate around us. So
that's beautiful, Ben.
Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, flakes to flakes. Justin to Kelly. Monsanto.
Thanks for viewing us, you sexy ducklings.
We're not out yet.
What? You said...
We still have to say that they can go to tralalaradionetwork@gmail.com to send us email. You can actually enter our contest right now. Coming up on November 7th through 8th. That's pretty soon, next weekend, if you're listening to this when the episode is released. We're going to be putting out a 24-hour live stream of us playing video games for charity. We're raising money for Seattle Children's Hospital. We don't have the exact times yet, but we'll let you know. Check out the Facebook page, Tralala Radio Network. Check out the Tumblr page, tralalaradionetwork.tumblr.com. Follow us on Twitter, @TralalaRadio. We're on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes. We can use reviews on all of those. But our contest, this will be our first time appearing on camera. It's going to be your first chance to see our whole gang. You're going to see our images. So before we reveal what we really look like, I'd like for you, our listeners, you sexy ducklings, to tell us how you think we might look. You can send a description, you can compare us to a celebrity, draw a picture, sculpt something. Any way that can convey a person's appearance, be as descriptive as you can, or as vague as you like. Include as many of us as you can, or even just one person. We want to hear from every single one of our listeners, and we'll give some kind of prize to our favorite choices. And we'll reveal those sometime on the air. Also, make sure you check out our live stream. Give us money. You can find links to all of that stuff on all of the pages we've listed.
Don't give us money. Give money to Seattle Children's Hospital.
Do both. Don't stop them. Let them spread their wings and be free.
All of the above.
Let their wallets be free and the credit cards fly where they might.
That money's just going to weigh you down. That's what
Amen.
Bob would have wanted.
Let it be so.
That's what he told me.
I'm also on Twitter myself. That's @Jake, ATSYMBOLJAKE. I didn't make it funny and scary for Halloween. It probably would have been Bat Symbol Jake, although that sounds a little more Batman than spooky vampire bat, which is part of the reason I didn't do it. Also, I'm just not that interested in Twitter culture. But I'm great on there. You should definitely follow me.
As always, our music was provided by Bronte Loves Kafka. You can find them on Facebook, /Bronte Loves Kafka. Actually, not probably / yet. They probably don't have it secured yet. And you can find them on Twitter at Bronte Love Kafka, no S.
I'm at Tanner is Awake. I post pictures of bunt cakes and talking about how I got a paper cut and Z-snapped on it.
Our producer this week was Quincy Jones.
When I want to do a Tori Melody thing.
Yeah, but we have to set it up because we don't know what we've said so far. So
Oh yeah. When we asked Quincy what the most spooky thing he could think of was, he said,
And we'll edit in something right there.
Yeah.
Right there is where we'll put the scary thing.
we'll put in some thing from our off-camera awful. No, it can't be off-camera. It has to be something they heard already.
It'll probably just be a gap in me saying, this is where we'll put in the scary thing.
The inevitable silence of death.
Here's a funny out-of-context quote.
Oh, frothing maggots.
I want to...
Don't want to die.
Because this is Twitter. Tweet at me. He's at
Billie Jean is not my lover.
Tra-la-la is my radio network.
It's Vincent Price.
Spooky
Ooh.
spiders.
And that is, what's...
Dan Harmon.
No, it's Vincent Price.
Spooky spiders.
Who's the author? David Sedaris.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been a great joke if I could have gotten it out.
Otherwise known as Prince Caroline.
I really hope they do that at some point. The Headless BoJack Horseman Halloween special.
Excuse me,
Prince.
the Caroline formerly known as Prince.